Yeah, let's start there. I think that's a great place to start. So, with the highly connected athlete, I think it's important for that athlete to develop the ability to know how they feel separate from the data. And many of us start the day by downloading our overnight data. And before we've even had a thought, our data is telling us how we're supposed to feel, or we might think our data is telling us how we're supposed to feel. And because we're getting numbers and metrics and seemingly objective info, we might think it has more value than how we actually feel ourselves. Something I've found sort of plugging myself in and looking at all this stuff is there's an inherent variability in our bodies. And even if we're feeling good and coping, there's this variability both day to day, across the day, and if you're using a metric like heart rate variability, it's even minute to minute. And our thoughts can impact these metrics, our heart rate variability. I mean, if you, for instance, if you ever get a shocking message and then you test your heart rate variability right after, you'll find that it's completely tanked for a few minutes just from that little bit of stress. And so if you're going to base your entire training day on this one metric, which is highly variable in itself, you're going to be jumping all around a bit. So one way around this concept is to focus more on trends and normal ranges. And so someone listening to this, I would say don't let the data, first off, don't let the data tell you how you feel. It's better to decide your subjective feeling and going through your subjective checklist before you even look at the data. So the two are separate. Then the next thing is you need to focus on the trend. How is the training trending? And am I within my normal range? And for me, I have really simple metrics that I've found work very well. It's just my seated resting heart rate, morning and evening. And I have a normal range for that. And if I know, because I recover slower as a master's athlete, I know if I'm more than 5 beats elevated in the evening, for whatever reason, the day's taken quite a bit out of me. And the next day either needs to be an easy day or a maintenance day. It can't be a loading day. And that, I mean, resting heart rate's one of the oldest metrics that we've had available to us. And then there's all this other stuff that we can have, but they're all kind of supplementary. And I think it's important to figure out over time. Remember, you're trying to make better decisions, but it's really more about making fewer poor decisions. It's about pulling mistakes out, because I think the most costly errors are where we hit ourselves. And instead of getting an adaptation, we're just making ourselves more tired, running the risk of injury, putting ourselves in a hole. So I think that's what it's more about. So the heart rate variability and some of these other more sophisticated metrics are really good as a negative signal. So they're not giving me the green light. They're showing me before I can feel it that it might be a red light type of day. And if I see that in the morning, I am still open. If I'm feeling good, I'm still open to going out and training. Then I go to the next phase and it's like, well, how do I feel in my warm up? Is my heart rate coming up? Is the feeling okay? Because sometimes you're just feeling a bit run down for whatever reason in the morning. You go out, you do a longer warm up, heart rate comes up, the feeling's good. I'm good to go. There's no reason for me not to train. But 20 years ago, 25 years ago, if I had a session in my calendar and it said, you got to go out and do the session, I'm going to do it no matter what. Now, with these additional metrics, they give me the confidence to say, you know what, I'm going to do the session, but not today. I'm going to push it out when I'm ready to get benefit from the session. And the focus on adaptation, so a more dynamic approach to loading. I don't load when something's in my calendar. I load when I'm ready to absorb that session. I think is probably the biggest shift over the last 20 years is this focus on, look, let's get some benefit rather than just doing the work. Whereas prior we were more work focused. So that would be how I'd approach the, if you like, the gizmos and the data. One
Yeah.
thing I like, you mentioned, so I got an Aura ring. And the most useful thing about the Aura Ring is actually that in effect, I take my temperature. I know what my overnight temperature is. And that's something that I would never track unless I was actually sick and checking for a fever. And that is even better than the heart rate variability. If I've been exposed to a virus or some sort of illness, that has done a really good job of letting me know before I realize that I might be at risk for getting sick. So I've missed, I mean, you never really know if you miss it, but I think I've missed getting ill 2 or 3 times over the last year. And if you're a competitive athlete or a high performance athlete, missing illness is a very valuable form. So that it's a useful thing. And that's the only way that I would capture the data, because I'd never bother taking my temperature in the morning otherwise.